What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast. It's your host, Natty Boss, and today I have a special guest, Mr. Christian Nelson, Dr. Christian Nelson, my apologies. And we're going to be diving into today some holistic modalities and options for pain management, recovery, performance. And I'm really excited. We randomly connected through Instagram recently. And so I wanted to have him on here to share more about what he does, his story, and diving into the sciences behind some of these modalities, because I know that all, if not many of my listeners are really interested in the holistic options for those particular themes of performance, recovery, and pain. So we have him on here today to dive into those to see if any of those pique your interest. So a little bit of background and bio of Doc, as he likes to be called. He grew up in a little town of Elgin outside Austin, Texas. And he's had his life changed at 15 by a chiropractor. So we'll definitely dive into that story, I'm sure, which inspired him to become a chiropractor himself. And after studying for 11 years, he dove into topics of frequency-based healing, functional nutrition and neurology, essential oils, CBD, cryotherapy, neuroplasticity, which is a personal favorite of mine, developmental psychology, another favorite, and many other topics that led him to graduate with his doctorate in chiropractic and started his practice in 2019. And he has a company, Advocate Wellness, which he started in January 2020. And he helps people all over various continents and all over the world with neck, jaw, and shoulder problems. In 2022, he started helping people with nerve pains, specifically with diabetes and chemo-induced neuropathy, which is interesting. And one of his most recent partnerships has been between Advocate Wellness and the Green Beret Foundation, or Green Beret Foundation. It's supporting berets and their family members' physical and mental health by relieving chronic pain, which that is awesome. So thank you so much for that. And he discovered Jiujitsu in 2020. So he does Jiu-Jitsu as well. So we could definitely dive into that. And I guess, do you currently still train at Keller Elite MMA?
Yeah, that's my home base.
All right, that's his home base. And he has 3 beautiful boys with his wife, Mary, and practices in Keller, Texas, outside Fort Worth. He enjoys golf, woodwork, shooting, playing guitar, riding horses, and of course, getting choked out by his friends. So without further ado, Mr. Dr. Christian Nelson, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Natty. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a real honor, and I'm excited to be here with you guys, and hopefully I can add some value for your listeners. And just be able to give them some practical tools and a little bit of knowledge to go along with it for maybe understanding a little bit deeper why it works and then how they can apply it for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Something I'm really passionate about is not just learning something, gaining the knowledge, but having some application behind it so you can start taking action right away, which is where change can be had. So without further ado, let's dive into a little bit about your story and what's led you to do the work that you've done. Obviously sharing a little bit more of that aha moment when you were 15 working with a chiropractor of what led you to obviously do some passionate work that you do today.
Very, very. I am blessed to do what I do. And my story started when I was in chronic pain as a teen. I had watched Rambo. And so I was terrified of going to the chiropractor because I thought that's what would happen. And the doc who changed my life, his name is Dr. Wilson. He's an amazing dude. He practices out over towards the east side of Austin. He's got a couple practices over there. He's a rugby player. So he's a big boy. He's 6'3", 6'4", 240.
Wow.
He's a big one. So I walk in, he's got, hands the size of dinner plates. And at first I was really hesitant, but my mom finally talked me into it. She's like, look, I've been going to see him for quite a while. I'm not dead yet. You should probably go see him. I was resistant at first. And finally I go to see him. And when they say the doctor will see you now?
Yeah.
This is the first time that I felt like the doctor really saw me. Because Wilson took the time to actually look at me. And I was just walking in and he says, do you play basketball or soccer? And I was nonplussed. Mom, what'd you tell him? She says, nothing.
Yeah.
Doc, how'd you know? I played both. He says, your body told me. Look at your calves. I was like, wow. Okay. cool. And so that was that first connection moment. And I got adjusted, and he found some really, really tight muscles and he stretched those out. That was my introduction to myofascial therapy. And I had so much relief that my pain dropped from, I think I was at about a 7 or an 8 that day at 15 years of age. And a lot of people think that young people can't be in that kind of pain, but they absolutely can.
Yeah.
I had so much relief that on the 10 minutes that my mom was driving us back to the house, I passed out. And then I climbed into bed and slept for the better part of 36 hours straight. They woke me up for my follow-up on Saturday morning. And they're like, "Hey, sleepyhead." I was like, "What time is it?" And I thought it was Friday. Like, no, it's Saturday, man. We had you fog a mirror because we thought you were dead. I was so out. I was so asleep. And so we go back to the chiropractic office, and we're sitting there, and I'm looking around. I was like, this is completely different. I had a great pediatrician growing up, but this is completely different. It was a remodeled house. There were skylights. It was bright. It was open. There wasn't like this little window where like the staff looks out and says, you know, the unwashed masses, you know, like, don't come here. You know, there's no whitewashed kind of stuff that makes you feel like you're in a psych facility. It was colorful. Wilson comes out. He's like hugging people. He's like, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, I'll be right with you in a minute." He knows everybody's name that's in the waiting room. And so I'm sitting there, I'm looking at this. I'm like, this is completely different. And then the door opens and a guy rolls in a wheelchair. And Doc says, "Hey, guys, like, he's hurting pretty bad. You mind if he goes first?" We're like, "Go ahead." Like, my pain had dropped down to like a 2 out of 10. So I was like, "Bro, go ahead. I'm good." About 15, 20 minutes later, the guy walks out pushing his wheelchair.
Wow.
I was like, what just happened? This is biblical. Like, the lame roll in and walk out. What kind of doctor's office is this? And I'd known since I was 5 that I was going to be a doctor. I just felt called to it. I was like, okay, so I'm going to be some kind of doctor. I just didn't know what kind. And that was kind of that spark that started that. Yeah, this is what I'm going to do. So I took a couple docs to lunch and asked them what they loved most about their job and what they hated most about their job. And I got those questions from my dad and my grandpa, and they're very wise, very, very smart figures in my life and guided me well. So I asked them a bunch of questions and kind of figured out how I wanted to shape my practice so I could enjoy it as much as possible and really deliver the value to my patients. So that focus started when I was like 15 or 16. Everything changed as far as academics. I got my undergrad from Texas Tech, got married. 2 months later, started chiropractic school here in Dallas, graduated on Saturday, started into practice on Monday. It's like, let's go.
That's amazing. So it's really interesting because we have a similar story in the sense that, like, I knew since 6th grade that I wanted to be in health and wellness and like be a dietitian and be in nutrition. And it's so cool how
awesome.
Very few and far between that I've seen and connected with in my life that kind of follow that same trajectory and kind of got that calling at such a young age and followed through it. You know, like, many people go to college with degrees that they don't use and they shift careers, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just really cool when you can see somebody have that kind of intrinsic pull, and it really is like their life calling from such a young age. So that's so cool. And one of the things you really mentioned that I thought was interesting to highlight, because it goes hand in hand with a lot of the trauma work I do, is, you know, trauma, pain, whatever it is. I mean, trauma is pain, but that like period of time of like sleeping, that makes so much sense, because whenever there's a release of pain in our body, I mean, the body needs like a lot of time to just heal and restore, because that's a huge release that has been stored in the tissues. So it's really interesting that you had that experience of like sleeping for the better part of, you know, 2-3 days, because your body integrate like all of that stuff that you've experienced. That's really cool.
A lot of people think of sleep. There's an expanded understanding of sleep that's really coming out. Andrew Huberman's been a big part of leading that charge. I've been seeing him talk about sleep more than probably anybody. That could just be an availability bias because I listen to him a lot. But he's been talking about sleep a lot. one of the things that people don't realize about sleep is that in your subconscious state, your brain can process data, I think somewhere along the lines of 30 times faster than your conscious brain can process. And so if you're looking at learning, and especially relearning, if you're looking at processing trauma, there's a belief, if you still have an emotional response to trauma, there's a belief stored in the brain that this is still happening.
Yeah.
It's not just a memory. There's a memory plus a very, shall we say, visceral response. And what the additional belief that needs to be added, it's this happened to me and it sucked. And the way that a lot of people respond to trauma is this is happening to me and it sucks.
Yeah.
And making the shift from this is happening to me to this happened to me and it sucked and I'm okay. That's the big one.
Yeah.
That's the big one is to shift it to the past tense. One of my favorite modalities, which I don't think we're going to dive into too much today. It's a great conversation. It's not my expertise, but is EMDR.
Oh yeah.
For those of you who don't know who that is, that's eye movement desensitization, and I want to say reorganization, but I don't think that's right. But the letters are EMDR, Echo, Mike, Delta, Romeo. And it's a type of therapy. I've benefited from it tremendously. A lot of my family members are getting it right now, and we're watching some really cool changes happening there, where generational patterns, traumas passed on from one generation to the other, and then inside of the same generation, like personal trauma or something that's happened to you that's triggering. It helps through a beautiful process. You guys can look this up, and please do. Through a beautiful process, it helps to take that memory plus visceral emotion, that like just gut punch, that just wrenching feeling, that panic state, and it helps to detach the two. And you don't lose the memory of the bad thing. A lot of people are scared. They're like, well, if I decouple them, will I lose the memory? No, you don't. A big part of what led me to do the kind of work that I do and just really focus on the brain-body connection, to where we're talking a lot about psychology, is the fact that my wife and I actually lost 4 babies. We had 4 miscarriages in a row after our first son.
Wow.
And so you want to talk about some pain and some trauma. So I had to go through and process that. And the only reason I can sit here in front of you today and talk about it is because of the EMDR. And what actually happened is that I regained memories from that time that had been blacked out, in addition to the details of, some of the details surrounding the miscarriages, because my brain was in overwhelm because of the mental pain. And so a lot of people say, well, what if I forget? You won't forget. Or at least my experience has been that I have not forgotten. I actually regained memories and times with my oldest, which I had blacked out.
Yeah.
And so that was just, it's been a really powerful force for good in my life. And it's something that it's not something I do, but it's something I refer out to all the time. There's some amazing therapists around here as well. So
amazing. Yeah. So good. Thank you for speaking to that and your experience in that. And so to more of your level of expertise and the modalities that you use, let's dive into, the first one, which is just chiropractic care. I know that nowadays I feel like it's being more accepted, and just like people are seeking that out a little bit more, especially with like athletes, like the clientele that is listening to this podcast. But I know that the old history is just like, this is not rooted in science. And I know that is just being debunked more and more. But I'd love for you to share a little bit more about just what chiropractic is, what the benefits are. And also, I'd love, as we go through each of these modalities, for you to share, like, what is, in your opinion, in your experience, the level of commitment required to start seeing change?
I saw that question that you'd posted me. Is like, hey, I want you to talk about like how much of this we would expect to need to see a difference. And I think that's a beautiful question. So let's jump in. So kind of the idea of like, what is chiropractic? I'd say that chiropractic is really it's a combination art and science of being able to help the brain and the body communicate as clearly as possible through the care of the spine. There are other connections between brain and body, for instance, hormonal, lymphatic, there's the fascial system, which acupuncture works through. There's other beautiful connections that are all, I would say, effective. To your point about, like people bad mouthing chiropractic in the past, chiropractic offers some very potent solutions to medications, and medications make some people a lot of money. And so then we run afoul with them because they like their profits. Absolutely. And it's like, okay, I get it. It's a playground and you don't want to play nice right now. And okay, all right, game on, let's go. That's where Jiujitsu comes in as well, from the mental and the physical as well. But mostly from the mental. There's a lot of mental Jiujitsu happening in the healthcare world right now. So for those of you who roll, first off, hats off for pursuing something that's difficult. And then here's why you might want a chiropractor in your life. There's basically a 3-part problem that I solve for in the spine. And it can be fairly simply described like this. Now there's some details I'm going to leave out here, but this is the best current working theory. Joints don't move correctly, inflame. Anybody's seen this if they turned an ankle, you turn that ankle, it blows up like a balloon, right? Well, that happens to a small degree in the spine if there's just like if you get dropped really hard, if you get taken down really hard, some of your vertebrae are going to take that load more than others. Okay. And if they get to a point where, maybe the joint fluid gets trapped on one side of a facet joint or something else like that, for whatever reason, trauma, emotional feelings, you can store trauma in your body. You only have this one body in which to feel everything you feel, by the way. You don't actually feel it in your brain, you feel it in your body. That's become very clear. Overuse. So repetitive motion type injuries, repetitive training type injuries. If you only drill the right side of your body, God, this is such a peeve of mine. That's a topic for later, maybe. And then, toxins, overload of toxicity, be that relational, spiritual, physical. You can be exposed to toxins, heavy metals. You can eat stuff that's not good for you. You're going to find a lot of that in joint motion and in joint health. They say that popping your knuckles will give you arthritis. That's been debunked. Hormone-laden dairy is much more likely. Hormone-laden dairy is much more likely to give you arthritis. Much more likely. Way too much estradiol. Holy crap. So anyway, joints don't move correctly. They inflame. That inflammation irritates and compresses the nerve because everything blows up. Now there's a physical pressure plus an irritation of the nerve. Irritation on the nerve is like static on a phone call. So I describe it like this. People who are trying to get their friends to their house in the dark for the first time with a bad phone connection can really relate to this. If your nerves are inflamed, if your nervous system is inflamed, there's a phone line and it's irritated, there's static. So the instructions are not going to come across clearly. So the brain says, turn right, and the body turns left. Or the body says, hey, I just turned right, and the brain hears, right? This is the sensory side. I just turned left. And then the brain could respond perfectly to what it heard, but it's not what actually happened.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a slight oversimplification, but the big idea is the same, right? And then those nerves go to your organs, and they also go to your muscles. So as far as like how it impacts everything from your heart to your lungs to your reproductive organs, your uterus, your ovaries, your testes, your guts, your prostate, like depending on who you are and what parts you got, like it impacts absolutely everything. It impacts your autonomic nervous system, your fight or flight system. So all of that's impacted. But those nerves also connect to the muscles that, because of the way your body was formed as a baby, connect back to the same joints that house the nerve, that run the muscle, that connect to the joint, that house the nerve, da. So when I approach things, the chiropractic aspect, I would say, is the most important because of the ability for the adjustment to positively impact joint motion from a mechanical standpoint, When you do that, you send an impulse up to the brain, hey, pay attention to this area. This area needs a little bit more love. Mm-hmm. And then to send a signal down to the body, clarifying the nerve inflammation, allowing the brain and body to connect more properly. So the chiropractors who I believe are most on top of their explanation of things will tell you that we don't fix the body. We allow the body to fix itself.
Love
we
that.
want to credit you. We want to empower you. This is what Jiujitsu does.
Yeah.
Life is hard, honey. Life is hard. We can't make life less hard. I can't fix your life. I can only make you more resilient and more powerful so that you can overcome the problems in your life. And when you do that, relatively life becomes easier. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think the problem is solved by removing challenges from life. And Jiu-Jitsu certainly does not do that for us. It always introduces more challenges. And then we have to become more powerful, more resilient, improve our self-support, and in order to be able to overcome some of those challenges and just become a better, more humble, smarter, more, shall we say, evolved person.
Love that. I really love what you said there, because it's kind of something that I always, as a quote unquote disclaimer, say myself, where it's like, I'm not a healer. I am
right.
Facilitator to help you heal yourself. So, and that makes perfect sense that would align with the work that you do, because it is like a holistic approach that you're also taking too. And that mind-body connection, realizing that our bodies create disease, but they also know how to heal. And it's the environments we put them in that can also, that will foster either one, right? The body will create disease.
I think you're onto something. Yeah. So let's talk a minute about the Human Genome Project, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So this was created. This was published in 1995, and they sequenced the human genome, and they were expecting to find about 120,000 genes, because they sequenced a fruit fly and they found about 23,000 genes, and they were absolutely shocked when they found about 26 to 27,000 genes in the human genome ballpark. Don't quote me on the precise number, but it's in the high 20s, and they were expecting a much bigger spread, because they were expecting a gene to regulate other genes and a much higher level of complexity of life between the fruit fly and humanity. And it was very humbling to find such a narrow gap in the number of genes. And then what they found that was very puzzling is there were no real regulatory genes. There were no genes that existed to regulate other genes. Which part of your DNA, because not all of your DNA is being transcribed at once. The reason why it's DNA, it's double-stranded, right? Nucleic acids. That's how your body stores information for how to make and recreate your body. A lot of people know that you have a new skin in every about 6 weeks. But what they don't know is that every soft tissue in your body turns over every 9 months. So if someone comes to me in a state where they have been in a state of disease for longer than 9 months, their body is recreating itself in a state of disease. Why? Why are you recreating yourself in a state of disease? That's a complex issue, but it comes down to a couple of simple things we can really do to impact things. So the first most powerful thing to realize is not all of your DNA is active. Best current numbers I've seen suggest 40% or less of your DNA is active. Now, your mom and dad got together. They did what they did. Here you are. Congratulations. Your total subset of your DNA is fixed. But which part of your genome you use is up to you. You mentioned that environment fosters disease or health. I would put it more boldly. I'd say environment determines disease or health, because what they found in the Genome Project is that the proteins, they're called histones, that surround the DNA respond to environmental cues to unlock and transcribe that DNA, which then becomes RNA, which then becomes proteins, and which becomes enzymes and building parts of your cells. So, and we've seen this, right? So we've seen both the positive and the negative example. If you're listening to this, think of a friend who maybe had their life fall apart, maybe relationally, maybe they went through a divorce or something else like that. And then Maybe, they used to be clean shaven and like just dress smart and stuff like that. And then they started dressing more slovenly. They started eating more poorly. They stopped shaving. They got like all shaggy. Maybe they ended up living, I'm going to throw spaghetti against the wall here, pull something out of my rear end. Maybe they ended up living in a trailer home and they gained 100 pounds and they just look like death. They went through whatever they went to emotionally. And, maybe in your life example, this happened and they came back, maybe they're still there. But for sure, you've seen somebody who got their shit together, started eating not at Quick Trip and 7-Eleven all the time. They started walking and exercising. Maybe they started jujitsu. And like a friend of mine, one of my first sparring partners, lost 100 pounds his first year in jujitsu and went from being deconditioned, easily out of breath, and fairly, like not super well socialized, to being an absolute beast on the mat. And despite the fact that he had lost 100 pounds, his pressure from mount was more than when he started. Yeah. He got so much better. It was awesome. And so there's both the positive and the negative, but like in Nathan's case, and, mad credit to him, he pulled his life together and he changed his environment. And as a result, his genetic code responded to that. And instead of transcribing the lower portion of his DNA, it started transcribing the upper portion, shall we say, the higher DNA that is more healthy, that expresses a more vibrant, more powerful, more potent you. Yeah. And so that's one of the main things I want people to understand. And so it can be physical environment. You can be rolling on the mats. You can be spending time with quality humans. You can be in interaction with them, which starts at least 6 feet apart, at least. And then you can be your emotional environment, your self-talk, and then your relationship with others, your social environment, and your spiritual environment. And physical environment also involves food, which is where what you do becomes so crucial, because people are in intimate contact with their food for at least 24 to 72 hours after they ingest it. Like, that stuff is touching you.
Yeah. That's really important.
For 3 days, depending, like at least 1 to 3 days, depending on your passage time, which, I think what's the ideal, like 1 to 2 days, like 24 to 48?
I believe so.
Yeah, somewhere in there. But still, that's a long time. Like, if you imagined you were to eat something, imagine basically duct taping it to your skin for a day and a half.
I'm very grateful.
And that's not even as that's not even as close contact as you are with your food. Like, it's much more intimate than that, actually.
Yeah. I'm really grateful in this moment to be vegan, because my first image was like a piece of raw steak just like taped to my arm, and I'm like, I do not want that shit on my arm for 48 hours.
For sure. Well, that's actually intriguing, because I actually went vegan, and I've actually gone through that, and actually came back to where I'm actually eating meat again. So I'd love to talk with you about that again at another point. There's a lot of benefits, a lot of health benefits people see from going vegan. And then I've actually found a lot of health benefits going past that and reintroducing meat. So I think that would be a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things you kind of spoke to before we move on, just for those who are interested in diving deeper into this, is something I'm really passionate about. And kind of what you were speaking to is like epigenetics, right? Epigenetics is the idea that we have this set kind of DNA system, but what turns on and off certain genes is our environment. And just like he beautifully stated, all of those different environmental factors play a role in what good genes, quote unquote, are getting turned on, and what more unhealthier bad genes are getting turned on. And so that is what it's in your control, even if your set DNA is not in your control. Once it's set, but you can influence it, which is why it's so important to integrate modalities and different practices that are in your control to give you the best kind of framework for success in your life, your health, your performance. So beautiful. I love how you also explain chiropractic care and use those analogies. I think it really makes it easy to understand. And then diving into one of the other modalities that you use, which I'm interested in, is this myofascial technique. So I know that you had mentioned there's stretching, trigger point release, muscle scraping, So kind of diving into some of those things, the pros and cons of those. And, again, are those something that is like a one-time you could feel a relief, or how does the effect of it last? Is it something that's a continual part of their care, or et cetera?
Let me actually answer that question about chiropractic real quick, because you had asked me to address that for each of them.
Oh, yeah.
And is it okay if I then switch to myofascial?
First, yeah.
Okay. So with the chiropractic adjustment, most people feel better. I think across the latest numbers I saw said about 85% of people feel better after their first adjustment. About 10% of people feel the same, and about 5% of people feel a little bit worse after their first adjustment. And so you'll feel something. The adjustment is not super subtle. A lot of times there are people who adjust with an instrument, and that can be a rather subtle adjustment. And there are people who adjust by hand. So that's if you've watched any of the videos on TikTok or something like that, where they have like the microphone right up next to the spine, you hear this giant like crunch noise. It's like, ooh, like they turn it into ASMR videos and everything. I think it's hilarious. It's not that loud for most people. For a lot of people, because they're carrying a lot of muscle tension, it's a little like click. And that popping noise is just like joint fluid moving around very, very quickly. It briefly becomes a gas, and that's what makes the pop noise. So it's like popping your knuckles. That's what's happening. It just sounds spooky, and people use a weird term. They call it like cracking your neck. There's nothing cracking. So by and large, tremendously safe thing. Effective dosage depends on how big the issue is that we're addressing. So the way I describe it is like this: if you had someone who came to you and said, "Hey, I have this giant construction project. How many days until we start to see a difference?" I'd be like, "Well, how big? What's the scope of work? How big is the construction? What do you want me to do for you?" Okay, sounds good. Some people see tremendous benefits on their first visit, kind of like I did. If you look at my Instagram and you find John Arroyo's story, it's pinned at the top right now. If you find Christina's story, she was able to walk for the first time after being in and out of a wheelchair for 6 years after her first adjustment. And then other folks just notice a little bit more of a gradual change. But most of my treatment plans average somewhere between 10 to 16 adjustments spread out over the course of 2 to 3 months to see just a really drastic change, because I'm directing the rebuilding of the body.
Yeah.
And a tremendous amount of the soft tissues turn over at that time. So it's not that, again, that I'm fixing. There's a little bit of the joint motion that I'm restoring in that moment, but big picture, it's like, well, what do you want done for you? One. And two, how long does it take for the tissues that are involved with that problem to turn over? I would suggest you should be getting regularly adjusted for at least that amount of time for an initial phase of care. And then after that, you can visit the question of maintenance, because everything we love needs to be taken care of. House, car, shoot, your driveway.
Yeah.
Like, you want to keep the leaves and the dirt off of it so the grass doesn't grow, so it doesn't crack the concrete. And you want to keep the roots out from under it so it doesn't like lift it. Like, everything we love and use requires a little bit of at least ongoing maintenance.
Exactly. Beautiful. Amazing.
Cool. Myofascial. Lots to unpack here. So myofascial refers to the muscle. Fascia refers to the envelope around it, which is kind of looks like spider web. If you've ever cleaned off, I know you're vegan, so I'm going to keep the description short, because you're like, you had a strong reaction to the idea of raw steak. So, but if you clean off some meat and that white fibrous stuff on the outside, that's fascia. And it's an envelope for the muscle, and it's incredibly strong. It takes a lot of tension to deform it, but it can happen, especially with whiplash, especially with quickly moving injuries. You got dropped really awkwardly, you got taken down really hard. If you had like a really severe stretch injury, or like there was a submission that went almost all the way, or, God forbid, like, an armbar and you got your elbow hyperextended, you would expect the fascia to have some sort of deformation on it. And so it wrinkles, or it like gets stretched too far. And so you can work on the fascia directly. As far as the muscles go, I find a lot more issues are, if it's a fascia issue, it's almost always an adhesion of scar tissue to the fascia, which then restricts the envelope in which the muscle can move. And so now the muscle is limited because the envelope is shall we say, arbitrarily restricted by the scar tissue. As soon as you dissolve the scar tissue, now the fascia is free. Now the muscle is free to move around inside of it, and you restore blood flow, restoration, size, from side to side, like symmetry. And that means symmetry of load on the body. Yes. Again, don't just drill on your right side for the love of God. And so I love taking care of people's muscles, because everybody has, well, not everybody, but about 2/3 of people like really love therapeutic touch, like a massage or something like that. About 1/3 of people just don't like to be touched. Like they just don't really enjoy it. And that's okay. But it could be everything from using a massage gun to, I teach people how to use lacrosse balls to release trigger points. Trigger points are spots in your muscle that, again, because of trauma, overuse, direct injury, the muscle knots up so badly that it cuts off its own blood flow. And then like it can't detox. And it's like a kitchen where someone's only taking out 3/4 of the trash every day. Doesn't take too long before that 1/4 and then the increasing amount, like it stacks up and the kitchen becomes non-functional. And nobody wants to spend any time anymore over there because it becomes stinky. So when you clear out the scar tissue and you actually push on it gently but insistently, you cause the blood vessels to dilate. There's a reactive vasodilation. So the blood vessels just blow wide open because there's so little blood flow all of a sudden that they go, oh, wait, we really got to supply blood flow here. And then the capillaries blow wide open. And when that happens, it flushes out the toxins, which allows the muscle to release. And if there's any scar tissue buildup, you can do that as well. Baseballs, softballs, too hard, they'll bruise you. Golf balls can break your bones if you lay on them. Please don't, especially the ribs. No golf balls. But lacrosse balls, they're made of hard rubber. And so they have a little bit of give. So I found them to just kind of be like the best. If someone has like really sensitive muscles or an area that's like really injured, tennis balls might be best. But I find that 99% of the time, lacrosse balls will cut it.
Awesome.
So it's the idea of that second part, joints that don't move correctly, inflame the nerves. We're going to talk about red light therapy in a minute. But then like the tight muscles can be addressed through the myofascial therapy. That can also include stretching, yoga. Warm-ups are actually a form of myofascial therapy, like mobilization drills. Stability drills are a form of myofascial therapy, because you want to train the muscles to all fire together and for a whole kinetic chain to operate at the same time, and for the stabilizers to fire just a bit before the movers.
Yeah.
Find that a lot with shoulder problems, rotator cuff injuries, very common for jiu-jitsu athletes. The rotator cuff, the nerves become inflamed, and then the rotator cuff doesn't tighten the shoulder into the body. So when the lats and the pecs pull, the shoulder's loose. Yeah. It's supposed to be snugged in. So if there's any inflammation, especially in this part of your neck right here, those nerves run C5-6, they run the shoulder blade muscles. And if they're inflamed, then the message gets there slower. And then the rotator cuff is trying to suck the shoulder blade in while those pecs and lats are firing. And then the little beady, like infraspinatus, supraspinatus, those shoulder blade muscles there, they're little thin little puppies. They're trying to fight your lat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good luck.
It's like a white belt. Then they end up with like a white belt.
Yeah, it's like, it's like you can, what you can struggle all you want. My story on the mats actually started like that. Tracy, she's an absolute beast, and then like Roberto, he's the professor, like head professor at the school. I wanted to see if the black belts would roll with a white belt, because I was like, okay, I know they're better than I am. One, I wanted to see how much better, and because I did want to end up at a McDojo. And the other one was, how much ego do they have? Now I understand after getting into the game more that, one, how dangerous white belts are.
Yes.
And some instructors might be like, I'm competing at the Pan Ams next month. I'm not rolling with any white belts. Hey, Mr. Brown Belt, get over here and sit on this white belt for me for a minute. So I understand that more now. So not to disparage any black belts who don't necessarily roll with every new white belt that walks in the building. You got to pick your opponents. You got to be prudent about it. Otherwise you're going to get injured quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, they armbarred me, just toying with me. And Tracy, I outweighed her by 50 pounds at the time, and I had a good 5-6 inches on her. And she armbarred me on alternating sides, just at will, for 5 minutes. And then Roberto did the same. It was just arm bars. That's what they were drilling that day. They were just doing arm bars. And I think she got me like 3 times on one side. And then I was like, oh, that's a little sore. She's like, okay, I'll get the other side. It's like, you can just pick. It's like, oh yeah, I can get whatever I want. I was like, oh my God. Helicopter sweeps, like just foot in hip, laid down as gently as could be. Like in retrospect, I was like, wow, that's a lot of control. Like
Yeah.
Tracy's awesome, man. If you ever get a chance to roll with her, I imagine you might know her personally, but if you ever do get the chance to roll with her, she's oh God, now I'm blanking on it. I think it's Dars. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's super
She's a class act.
amazing. Yeah, I definitely would like to connect for sure with any female black belts. I'm always down. So
Oh yeah.
when you dive into, I personally use a lot of red light therapy as well. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about like the red light therapy, any other laser therapy. And I know that you had mentioned somewhere, I don't exactly remember where, but this idea of like, for instance, the red light therapy that I got is from Amazon. So I think it's like the dosage or the wattage
Right.
is as strong as like maybe going to a facility that has a specific, I don't know if I'm using the right terms, but like wattage or something like that. So definitely
no, you're spot on.
to see like what, if you are doing one at home, which does make it financially affordable for sure. There are ones that are pretty affordable. What would be like the gap that you would need to fill as far as like 10 minutes in a facility versus 20 minutes at home or something like that?
Yeah, great question. So with red light therapy is a little odd because it seems weird that you would shine a light at the body, and these red light devices are basically very fancy, very refined flashlights, varying levels of fancy, expensive, and refined, and varying levels of power. And you would shine a light at the body and it would change its behavior. A lot of people find this very strange. But then I would like to lovingly remind everyone that's listening that you do the very same thing with your TV and your DVD player. And that you shine an invisible light at your TV and it turns on. And without hesitation, you will pick up that remote, you will point it at the TV, you will click the power button and it turns on and you don't question it. The laser is a remote for the body. The only thing that makes it a laser is the fact that a lot of these devices produce a discrete frequency, which means that they produce like precisely 637 nanometers red light. So it's a very bright red light. So the wavelength there is on the shorter end for red light there. And so like the higher the number, the longer the wavelength, the lower the frequency. It's the weird thing about vibration. Here, I'm going to credit my dad for teaching me physics and vibration. And he's an acoustical engineer. So he does like sound quality and sound control as far as like helping things not be too loud. Everything from making sure the CEO's coffee cup doesn't have like ripples in it when they're testing stuff in the lab that they decided to put under the CEO's office, down to helping neighbors with their complaints about the gas pressure, the gas compressor station that got moved in, where they were promised it was going to be nice and quiet, but then at nighttime it keeps everybody awake, and now property values are dropping. My dad has done all of that. He's a really incredible human. Yeah, cool. I learned so much from him. But so you have this remote for the body, and it's a laser because it produces one frequency, not because like, Luke, I'm your father, right? It's not that kind of laser. There are lasers that are used in dermatology and stuff like that that are hot lasers. What I'm referring to here is what's referred to as cold laser, or like low level laser therapy. LLLT is how it's referred to in a lot of the literature if you want to Google it. And the idea is that receptors on the outside of the cell have what's called a resonant frequency, where if you hit them with a certain frequency, they will vibrate and they will do the thing called conformational change, where the conformation, the shape of it will change. And that's the same thing that would happen as if a hormone or a medication had bound to the receptor. It changes shape and it triggers a response on the inside of the cell. so that at the end of the day, whether it's by medication, whether it's by cell signaling, whether it's by hormones or all these different things that the body does, or whether it's light therapy, it could be a vibrational therapy, it could be pressure, these receptors will change shape, and that's where you get your response from the cell. Then it does the thing. So you can do this using red light, which is beautiful because it doesn't require it to touch the body. So let's say that somebody comes in and they have an injury in their neck or their back, and it's very tender. And I would love to get in there and release the muscles, but the nerves are really, really inflamed. It's really tender, and they just really don't want anybody to touch it because they're getting like a kind of guarding mechanism, like their shoulder rises up and they're like, yeah, get out of there, right? Anybody who's had a chronic injury in jiu-jitsu probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. The red light therapy will allow you to decrease the pain, decrease the inflammation, and speed up the healing by 2 times. Now, the frequency matters. There's a lot of people saying, hey, 660 is great. I prefer 637 or like the low 800s. The upper 800s have a lot of benefits too. So I'll use 637, 809, and 890. Or excuse me, 808 and 890. And if you get, the cool thing about red light therapy is if you get close, like there's an element of close enough to where it'll work. So the dosage there really depends on power.
Sorry, that number, that is.
Sure.
What is that number? The voltage, is it hertz? Is it?
That's so great question. That's the wavelength. So that's a nanometer wavelength, right? So 637 is solidly, if you look at the electromagnetic spectrum, it runs from, you can still see 808, 890 you can barely see. So I'd say it runs from about 850 is solidly visual, like that's pushing infrared on the low end to, I think it's at about in the 430s is like blue pushing ultraviolet.
Okay, cool.
Like blue purple has got the shortest wavelength, so therefore the highest frequency.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's some benefits to blue light, but like you get into like sunburn territory over there with UV. So yeah. I prefer the red light therapy. Yeah, and so there's a lot of warming effects with it too. But as far as power goes, look at the amperage, because that's the amount of power that it's putting out. So a lot of the units that I use are pushing, they're class 3 lasers. So they're a lot more transportable. They're less powerful than a class 4. Class 4s you're going to find those in facility only. They're very expensive. They're very high power. And so they're used for a short period of time. So treatments are very fast and effective. But if you don't want to pay for the services and you have time available, you can get a device that has a much lower power rating. So we're talking maybe like, 100 milliamps. The class 3s that I'm running are pushing 1400 milliamps. So if you have a device on Amazon that you purchased, and I'm using it for 10 minutes for a treatment on an area, and you have something with 100 milliamps, let's presume the frequencies are the same and there's equal effectiveness because of some of the settings in the laser, you would have to use it for 140 minutes to get the same dosage.
Gotcha.
Right. So it really comes down to power. The placement to how close you can get it to the area that's injured also makes a huge difference. In radiation, there's something called an inverse square law, which they use a lot in X-ray. Sorry to anybody who's not an imaging tech. But the idea is the further away it is, you actually have to, the power delivery drops exponentially. So if you double the distance, it's a quarter of the power delivery because it's 2 squared. If you triple the distance, it's 1/9 of the power delivery, and so on. So the closer you can get it to your body, the better, especially the closer you can get it to the area that's injured. So yeah, I mean, you can get something on Amazon. I've had people get good effects with this, but they had to sit for 30 and 40 minutes with like a 300 milliamp like unit pushed right smack up against the area that was hurting.
Wow. Okay. That's really good to know. Awesome. And so I wanted to dive into some of the other things that you said that you kind of speak to and offer support with your clients. That is more in we talked a lot about the different like body aspects and the body work that you can do.
Sure.
But now what about like some of the nutritional supplements and essential oils is something that you are kind of big in. So what do you recommend for the pain management, the recovery, and the performance for those?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the most important thing that I would recommend to people is to say that I want you to think of your actions in your life as either support or load. And what you want to make sure is that your support exceeds your load. If you have infinite support, theoretically, you can carry an infinite load. So if you're sick and your body's breaking down, there's an area of support that needs to increase, or if you've maxed out every bit of support you can ever offer your body, not likely, your load needs to then decrease. So for people who are like supporting themselves, they're eating as healthy as they can, they're exercising, they're doing everything they know how, and their body's still breaking down, maybe you need a career change. That's been my formal recommendation at some time. I'm like, look, your workplace is toxic. It's literally tearing you up. They won't let you get up and go for walks. You're not able to drink the water. Like, you're not eating lunch. Your energy is crashing in the afternoon, and you're just in a hypercortisolic stress state all the damn time. You need a new job. This job is eating you from the inside out.
Absolutely.
Get a new job, sharpen up your resume. I will take care of you in the interim. And there's going to be some chaos we're going to go through to get you to that new job. And I'm going to care for you and decrease the stress on your body while you go through that chaos so you can actually face it. But then, let's get you a new gig. So that's how I want people to just generally think about their health, because it's simple. And simple is powerful.
Absolutely.
This is why the basics will stay the basics in jiu-jitsu or healing or whatever. It's the basics are the basics for a reason. Yeah. When it comes to essential oils, quality matters. I partnered with doTERRA for about the last 12 years, and I've loved their products. There are a couple of other really quality companies out there as well, for varying reasons, which we don't have time to go into. I love doTERRA more than anything. One of them is their public accountability as far as what's in the bottle. Yeah. There's a lot number, and you can look up the GCMS and some other tests, and they offer that public accountability to everybody from lay people to high-level chemists to be like, look at what's in the bottle. This is what's in this bottle. And they'll never control it they'll only control it for a therapeutic range of different constituents from let's say like tea tree oil. It's very, very healing, very good for you. It should be on your feet. Especially please put it on your feet and between your toes if you're rolling a lot. Keep the foot fungus and the strap and staph and stuff like that from coming home with you or going to the mat with you. Don't get your mats dirty, please. Speaking of someone that had a raging staph infection on my forearm, with essential oils and with red light. Nutrition. Enzymes are underrated. I have been recommending more enzymes to people than ever before. Muscles are softening, recovery is speeding up, they have more energy, their digestion is improving, digestive-based inflammation is dropping like crazy, arthritis is going away because that starts in the gut, and all sorts of things like that. There are very powerful antioxidants you can ingest, like glutathione. Get you some. It usually comes with milk thistle, especially like the Now brand. I love the Now brand of supplements.
Yeah, I use the Now brand too.
Oh man, as far as they pack 80th to 85th percentile quality, I'd say, for probably about 40th to 50th percentile price point. So as far as bang for your buck, I have not found a better supplement line. If there's somebody who's super freaking sensitive and they need something that's ultra clean and ultra pure, I might reach for a different supplement line. But for the vast majority of people, Now Foods will get her done. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
Glutathione is one of my favorites. Milk thistle is amazing for the liver. Your body's detoxing. People think that, treating the kind of issues I do, that I'd probably see musculoskeletal problems propping up from the nervous system. I see toxicity more than anything else. And we adjust the parts of the body that really support the detox mechanism of the body more than anything. Spiritual, relational, physical, mental detox is probably the most important thing you can do. So milk thistle is your friend. Your liver is regenerated completely new for every 8 weeks. So if somebody comes in and they say, I have cirrhosis of the liver, I'm like, why? Has it been longer than 8 weeks? Why? You have a new liver. It recreated itself cirrhotic. Why?
Yeah.
A lot of diagnoses are just symptom labels.
100%.
They're not actually causes.
100%.
You'll go to the doctor and they'll diagnose you with cervicalgia. Doc, my neck hurts. Cool. Let me translate that into Latin for you. Charge you $200.
Yeah.
Bullshit. That's literally what cervicalgia means. Cervical. neck, algia, pain.
Those are
unacceptable.
really good tips. Yeah, really good tips. And one of the things that I really like that you highlighted, which for the listeners listening, this kind of comes back to what I always say, that like you can't avoid the inner work because like Doc just said, you know, the physical stuff is the lowest on the totem pole. It's all the emotional, the spiritual stuff, and the detoxing of all of that is going to support you more sustainably and more deeply. And so we can buy all the supplements, buy all the things that are more surface level and physical, but you cannot avoid the internal work if you truly desire deep change from your tissues and from the inside. And so I just love that you said that, because it really highlights and reaffirms everything that I constantly preach about. So guys, it's not just coming from me.
100%.
You said it too.
Nope. Yep. Absolutely. And I want to guys, like, you guys have just an amazing like guide here in Natty. So like, I want you guys to listen to what she's got to say and really soak up that wisdom. Because, you know, something else that I saw that you focus on a lot is breath work.
Yeah.
Guys, is the single most powerful, voluntary, completely free way to access your nervous system, calm it down, help it regulate, be able to heal yourself from the inside out. You end up doing the physical work and the internal work actually at the same time. So as far as leverage, as far as dose and delivery of any kind of therapy, I have not seen anything that really compares to breath work. Yes, I'm a chiropractor. I absolutely love what I do. I'm going to continue doing it for presumably another 30 years, God willing. Like tomorrow's not assured, but that's what I plan on doing. But guys, do your breath work. Make sure that your ribs move. To that point, an easy thing that people can do. I have a resource I'd love to offer folks, if that's okay.
Or so if you have a link for it, I can put it in the show notes.
We'll make sure and link it in the show notes there. Guys, look in the link for on my YouTube channel. There's a video instructional for how to release trigger points using a lacrosse ball. I know I mentioned this earlier. Please watch that. It's about 6 or 7 minutes. It's so much better than the first one I made. I got a friend who's a videographer and an editor to come through and help. Oh my gosh, it's so much better. So please watch the second one. And it's going to teach you how to use the lacrosse balls to release trigger points and muscle tightnesses. If your ribs don't move easily and freely, you're not going to be able to belly breathe effectively. If you're up here breathing up here into your chest with your neck muscles, man, you're just going to drive your nervous system further into fight or flight. Belly breathe. Okay. I know that's a trick when the guys got you in neon belly. Yeah. But like, first off, trip out. Second off, start belly breathing. Nose breathe. That's the other one. Nose breathe and belly breathe. Much as you can. Much as you can. What else you got for me, Natty?
Yeah, so I really just wanted to wrap up here with sharing the ways in which people can connect with you, the best ways that they can connect with you. There's so much wisdom,
absolutely,
nuggets in here that they can take away. And so if you want to learn more, obviously you're local to the Texan people in the Austin, or no, the Fort Worth area or the Austin area.
Fort Worth, yes, please.
Fort Worth area.
Yeah, I'm up in Fort Worth. Yeah.
You.
Yeah. So the easiest way to connect with us is probably on YouTube or Instagram at Advocate Wellness TX. So that's Advocate Wellness, like my clinic, TX, like the state of Texas. And if you guys live in some of the other states in the union that are going kind of nuts right now, get your tuckus back over here. Like, welcome to the Republic. Life is good here. Life has been pretty damn good here for the last 3 years. So if you're tired of the crazy, get your ass over here. But yeah, so that invites us open. Just remember the culture differences that made life good here. Don't change that. It's pretty cool. To that, other than that, we're on TikTok. I don't post there super often. I'm on LinkedIn a little bit, but I'm most active on Instagram and YouTube. If you want to shoot me an email, if you have any questions following up, we'll make sure to put those in the show notes as well. advocatewellnesstx@gmail.com. We have a general supplement protocol we recommend as far as like magnesium, glutathione, the saw palmetto. I didn't get a chance to talk about that, and some others, which is really fantastic for men and women. But yeah, feel free to reach out for that, and then we'll link the YouTube video. You can watch some more videos over there. I've been focusing a lot on helping people with neck and shoulder pain and stuff like that. If you want to experience an adjustment like we do it here. I'm not your average chiropractor's office, but we do have a new patient special going right now for just $21 if you want to experience that. We discount it very deeply because we want it to be just a no-brainer to like come and experience it. It's the wisdom of, you know, Nathaniel when he's talking to his buddy about Jesus. He's like, come and see, come check it out.
Absolutely. I love that. Love that you offer that, make it accessible for people to open their minds to try. That's really, really nice. And so, of course, I always love to end on, for those who do Jiu-Jitsu, who I interview, kind of like a fun little question of right now, what is your current takedown or submission that you've been loving?
Oh, for sure. My favorite takedown has got to be the Tai Otoshi.
Nice.
So I'm a bit of a judo nut. Yeah. But I also have a background in dance, in ballroom dance. So the catching that underhook and the wrist control on this side, it's like a dance frame for me already. And then like a long back step and then just like dropping down. Ooh, it's so sweet. I love it so much. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, especially like when people like back their hips way away and their feet are way out there. They create this little cave for you to just like drop in and like, ha, gotcha, bitch.
Nice. I love it.
Favorite submission has got to be triangles.
As
I'm getting up in belt levels, they're harder to hit because people are better at escaping them.
Yeah.
But there's something about a triangle that I just love.
I agree. So cool. Well, thank you so much. Again, like you mentioned, all the ways that you can contact him and all the different resources, we'll post it in the show notes. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us and share your knowledge. If there was anything that resonated with you guys and anything that you learned, which I know that I learned a lot about just wavelengths alone, which were kind of an adjunct part of this conversation, but I learned a lot.
Right.
Share with us on
so
social media. You can tag us, tag him, tag Body by Boss LLC. We'd love to reshare what you're learning. And thank you again for tuning in. And thank you, Christian, for being here.
It's an honor. I hope your listeners got a ton of value from today's conversation.
Absolutely.